Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sociology video series. We are currently in part 5 of chapter 2 in our video series, and we are still in section 2 of the textbook, which involves cultural variation. Today we're going to be talking about the concepts of subcultures and comparing that with what is called countercultures. First off, a subculture, as it says here, is a segment of society that shares a distinctive pattern of mores, folkways, and values, and so forth, that differ from the larger society. So basically, it's a group within the dominant society, a group within a group. As it says there, a subculture is a culture that exists within a larger dominant culture. Now, basically, we all belong to many different subcultures. So, for example, I'm Irish Catholic. And so within the dominant culture in American society, I am part of the subculture of Catholics. I am also part of the subculture of Irish. I am also part of the subculture of males. I'm middle-aged, so I'm in the subculture of middle-aged people. And so there's a number of subcultures that we all belong to. And as it says here, what puts a group of people into the category of a subculture is that they do something that is unique compared to the aspects or components of the dominant culture. So a visual sometimes is the best way to look at this. If the big circle in the middle there represents the dominant or the mainstream culture, that has its own set of components, and we learned about those components earlier on in the chapter. And you can see that within the dominant and mainstream culture, there are, according to this visual, 3 subcultures. And you can see that there is some connection to the dominant mainstream culture. There is some subcultures that do almost everything very similar to the dominant culture, with the exception of maybe one thing. They might have a unique religion compared to the dominant culture. They may not speak the dominant language of the dominant culture. There may be some holidays that this subculture celebrates that the dominant culture generally does not. So basically a subculture, we can understand it by looking at the visual here. Something about that subculture makes it unique or stands out or makes it different from the dominant culture. And of course, based on the visual here, you will see that some cultures do more things that are unique compared to the dominant culture than others. As you can see by this visual, you see 2 groups of people that have completely broken away to certain degrees from the dominant mainstream culture. And those groups of people would be referred to as a counterculture. But first, let's take another look at the subcultures and give you some examples. These sort of 2 photographs show a couple different subcultures in our country. Subcultures can be based on your ethnicity or your race or age. The photo on the right represents a group of teenagers or maybe even tweens, and they do something that is unique compared to the dominant culture. It could be the music they listen to, it could be their fashion styles, it could be their language or slang, but basically any group of people that does something a little unique compared to the dominant culture is going to put themselves in the category of a subculture. Could also be, we mentioned fashion before, so the goth community would be a subculture in the United States because generally they're going to dress differently. They might have their own style of music, which is a little bit different or unique compared to the dominant culture. The picture on the right of Paris Hilton, certainly the Hollywood celebrity subculture does some things that are a little unique. The norms, behaviors, and values of many people in that Hollywood celebrity culture is going to be unique in some way compared to the dominant culture. Next up we have counterculture, and I showed you on the visual a couple examples of a counterculture there, but a counterculture, as it says here, is created when a subculture conspicuously or obviously and deliberately opposes many or all of the aspects of a larger society. A couple examples of that would be in the 1960s. We saw a very popular counterculture, which was the quote hippie movement of the 1960s, but you could also make the case that there's various criminal elements, criminal gangs in the country that do quite a bit that is different from the dominant culture in terms of the way they make their living. In this case, the tattoos, it could be their fashion. Basically, their values and norms are very different from the dominant culture, which would put them more in the case of a counterculture.